Hey there, and welcome to Time to Lean, the podcast where you air your dirty laundry and we help you clean up your shit. I'm Crystal Britt.
And I'm Laura Danger. Think of us as your household secret weapon, taking your questions and voicemails to navigate the wild world of gender norms and household dynamics.
We dive headfirst into the nitty-gritty of how broader social issues impact our everyday lives.
So don't be shy, send us your dirty laundry.
And we'll help you clean up your shit.
This is Time to Lean. Welcome back, everybody. This is Laura and Crystal with Time to Lean. We are so happy you are here. There's something that hit the news that we want
big news week
that we want to talk about. And I mean, it's been everywhere. You may have heard about it. But today we're going to talk about Ballerina Farm. If you don't know who this is, I would say Ballerina Farm is the account. It's the brand.
Yes,
correct?
That's the brand. Yes.
Okay, so there's this influencer, the influencer of influencers. If you know about mommy influencers, you know about Hannah Nealman. And Hannah Nealman and her husband, Daniel, correct?
Yes. Yep.
Okay, so there's Hannah, Daniel, and their 8 children. The oldest is 12, and the youngest is small enough to be in a baby carrier. Very small. They live on a farm in Utah?
Yes,
correct?
in Utah. Yes.
Okay. They are Mormon. They are a white family. And he is, I don't know what details are relevant. He is the heir to an airplane fortune. Heir to a billionaire. Okay, what did I miss?
I think that's all of it. They are, here's the thing. I am not, there was a time when I was like up to date on some, like a certain niche of mommy influencers. That was before it was like, I don't know, I guess a thing, because now I feel like you can name a mommy influencer and it can be literally anybody. And it's like, I don't know who that is. Ballerina Farm is, and I think we talked with Sarah Peterson a little bit about when we had the episode with her about her book Momfluence, which is an incredible read if you have time and energy. But Ballerina Farm is one that she talks about a lot. I'm looking up her account right now because I don't follow her. She has 9.1 million followers, which in this day and age is a bonkers number. Like that is wild. The only other thing I would say that's relevant that we missed is that she is a Juilliard trained ballerina.
Yeah. Okay. So I think that's going to come up because that really stuck out to me. So the reason that Hannah Nealman and Ballerina Farm is big news is because, would you say for the first time ever, there was a profile done of them in the Times, and it's the most access. Like somebody went and spent the journalist who is Megan Agnew. She went and spent the entire day with them and did this interview and was in their home. And the way that the journalist writes about this is so smart and really uses like descriptions of what is happening for the reader to then draw their own conclusions, which is such a brilliant way to handle what we're going to get into, because it's a very interesting profile.
Yes, it's a very interesting profile. And I guess the access that the Nealmans gave to this, it's the Sunday Times, like not to be confused with New York Times, which is how I initially like went to go find it, which is interesting because the New York Times did an article, like had a piece at the end of January, beginning of February, where they covered her, I want to make sure I get this right, for Mrs. World, covered her going to Mrs. World postpartum. And I remember reading about that article, but I don't feel like it went as viral as this one. And I think the level of access and the level of like at home in their homeness is like the selling point for this article. It was very interesting. I don't even know where we should start. Where do you want to start with this?
Well, okay, let's start with the opener because so the New York Times did this article on her because of the Sunday Times article that we're going to talk about that just came out opens with a scene from the pageant Mrs. World. She competed. She went to the Mrs. World competition 12 days postpartum with her 8th child.
Yep.
So I'm just going to read a little excerpt from it. It says, Hannah Nealman was pregnant with her 8th child, and she had 2 due dates. The first was for the baby, obviously. The second, just under 2 weeks later, was for a beauty pageant. Nealman had been crowned Mrs. America in August 2023 at a Las Vegas mega casino and resort, which is what the New York Times article, they have a really cool photography of what happened. That's what they cover.
Mm-hmm.
So she was invited back to the city to compete in Mrs. World, parading around the stage in a swimsuit and 5-inch heels, shoulders back and hips popped, spray tanned, glistening, and 12 days postpartum, obviously. Then it goes on, and the Megan Agnew asks Hannah about
Mm-hmm.
this. Hannah, she's 34 years old, sitting in her kitchen in rural Utah, 2 of her children literally swinging off of her long golden hair. She says she knew, she was prepared. Throughout the pregnancy, she lifted weights, she did ice baths, she lowered herself into irrigation ditches on the farm. She took iron supplements to speed up the healing. And then they go through the step by step process day by day as she starts to try to heal her body so that she's prepared. And says she tried on outfits, zipped herself into a pair of leather trousers and skin tight white ball gown. Day 10, spray tan. Day 11, 2-hour flight with a newborn to Vegas, her husband and 7 children following behind, along with other members of her family. And on the day 12, she was on stage. Luckily, she had stopped bleeding. That right there, I when I had my second kid, I had been laid off. I got laid off while I was on leave, and I had to go to an interview 10 days postpartum. And the way that I had to shove my body, I remember it was such a terrible feeling getting dressed in my room, trying on these business casual outfits and not being able to hide my belly because it was protruding. I didn't know what underwear I could wear so it didn't show because I was still bleeding. I felt like reading this hurt my body because
Yeah.
that was my second baby.
Yeah.
That's a lot.
It's so much. And it makes me want to disassociate. And the paragraph before that, I just want to say, she also says Flora, her 8th baby, was a 1-push baby, Nealman said on Instagram. In the first days, she, quote, laid low, not leaving the house. On the 5th day, she says, I looked at Daniel, her husband, and I said, I don't know if I'm going to be able to go. This is a lot. I was bleeding and swollen and milk was coming in. Here's my thing. When you are in a mindset of you're doing cold plunges and irrigation ditches because that's what you have available to you, you're lifting weights, you're taking iron supplements, for her to on the 5th day go, this is a lot, I feel has to be above and beyond a lot. If you were already pushing yourself, do you know what I mean? If the mindset is no, I can do this, I'm going to push myself to do
Yes.
it. For her to verbalize this is a lot. Oh, here's my other thing, and this just might be the way my brain works. What is this for? I understand that pageants, I don't understand doing things for clout or for title. I don't understand that. I understand if you are if you're a family who needs the money, if you need if that's your career and that's how you're going to provide income to your family, I can wrap my head around that. I don't get doing something for a title. That doesn't make any sense to me. So for this, I'm who and what is this for?
Well, and then okay, I think that that's a really good that brings us to, I'm so glad you read the rest of that paragraph, because the husband is a theme in this. And
Mm-hmm.
I think that when you think God, this article is so brilliantly ties together. If we want to look at just Hannah Nealman and her family, that's one thing. If we want to look at like what that says about society, it's another. But they met in college, and she was 21, he was 23, and he hounded her. He was like, I saw
Mhm.
her, she was going to be my wife, I loved her. Hounded her for 6 months, and she said, no, 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 I don't want to go on a date with you. And at one point she said she was, she went to college in Utah. Is that right?
That's a really good
Like,
question. I think so. I'm trying to look back through the article really quickly. I think so. I think that's how they ended up in Utah.
okay, well, she was in college somewhere where he was, and she was also Juilliard trained as a dancer. She was a very, very, very good dancer. She was flying back to New York for something, and
To
he
go back
found
to
out what
Juilliard.
flight she was on.
Mhm. Mhm.
Yes. He called his dad and said, Daddy, Daddy, put me on the flight next to this woman. Here's her name. And got sat next to her on a flight, a 5-hour flight, bullied his way into the seat next to her, trapped her in that conversation, can't escape. Um, and they started dating, and she wanted to wait to get married. He didn't. So you get the sense that she was forced into marriage. She was lured, coerced, whatever, into marriage. At month 2, a couple months later, they're pregnant. They have been having children every 9 months or so.
Yes. And because I'm looking at that section of the article, that she said she wanted to wait for it like a year to get married so that she could finish school. And he said that's not, quote, it's not, and sorry, this is Hannah quoting Daniel. And Daniel was like, it's not going to work. We've got to get married now. After a month, they were engaged. 2 months later, they were married. 3 months later, she was pregnant. The first Juilliard undergraduate to be expecting in modern history. Oh, and then Daniel got a job as the director of his father's security company. And then they settled in Utah after they lived in Brazil
Yeah.
where she had 3 kids under 4. Anyway, like it's very interesting. And like the other component too that I don't want to miss on this is that the journalist goes out of her way to say, like, they talk a lot about Mormonism and their family values surrounded around their religion, much more in person than they do online. And I feel like this is like a very normal thing to have happen in religious contexts where like the point of women's value is to be found inside the home. And so the fact that she's a Juilliard trained ballerina, the fact that she
Mhm.
has other dreams, it's almost like in those situations, in those cis hetero relationships, the woman has to conform to like you can have opinions and dreams as long as they fit under this umbrella of what I want or what quote unquote we want, which is what happens a lot in the article. She'll say something and then be like, well, is that right? And then like turn to him, or he'll interrupt her and say like, we have this vision of this is what we still do have those visions, right? And it's just very, I don't know. Like on this side of it feels very yucky.
Yeah. Yeah. They give the journalist a tour of the house, and they're going through their relationship history. And she says, was this what she always wanted? I ask when we get a moment alone while Daniel checks on the animals. No, she says. I mean, I was like, this is the other theme. She keeps second guessing and
Yeah.
pausing. And she says, my goal was New York City. I left home at 17 and I was excited to go there. I just loved the energy, and I was going to be a ballerina. I was a good ballerina. But I knew that when I started to have kids, my life would start to look different. And then they go into like, their history. They go into Daniel's history. Daniel also grew up in a Mormon family, 1 out of 9 in Connecticut. His upbringing was moneyed and suburban. Was this what he always wanted? I asked him when he walks back. Yes, he says. I expected Hannah to be more at home with the kids, but she said, I watched my parents working together. And so whatever we do, we got to do this together. So it's like, and I can't remember, maybe it's later in here. Oh, Our first few years of marriage were really hard. We sacrificed a lot, she says, but we did have this vision, this dream. And Daniel interrupts. We still do. What kind of sacrifices? I ask her. Well, I gave up dance, which was hard. You give up a piece of yourself. And Daniel gave up his career ambitions. That struck me because they don't go into that. What do you think that she meant when she said that he gave up career ambitions?
Well, that's my next question was going to be, did he? They own a very well, first of all, when did that happen? Because he worked for his dad, and then now they have this farm that they run as a business that he has a career. And the thing that I have seen in like comment sections like in defense of her is like, well, she's a co-CEO. Like she's very clear that like they own this business together. Here's where I take issue with this. They don't have any help with nanny. Like in terms of childcare, that was one of the biggest points that was taken away from this article for like the internet at large. Confirmation, it had never I feel like I read, I don't want to misspeak or misrepresent. I feel like there was no confirmation prior to this article that they have no nannies. They have no childcare. She provides full-time childcare to them. So if she's co-CEO,
that was the assumption. Yeah, the
yes,
assumption was that everyone's like, the people were critical of her because they said,
yes,
"Oh, all of these influencers are selling an impossible dream because behind closed doors, they've got full-time staff. They've got
right,
multiple nannies making sure this runs."
right.
That's always been the narrative.
Right. Right. And in this article, she confirms they do not have nannies. She provides full-time childcare. So if she's co-CEO of this business and this is her career, she has 2 full-time jobs that she works. And then Daniel
Yes.
is a co-CEO. Like again, this is like something that we talk about that comes up a lot that we talk about on the podcast, which is there are some relationships where nothing changes in cis hetero relationships where one partner, typically the male partner, nothing changes when you have a kid. He maintains his autonomy.
No.
He retains his dreams. He retains his career ambitions. There's not like Daniel gave up his career ambitions. What do you mean? Like he doesn't work for his dad. He doesn't work for JetBlue anymore. Like, I don't know. Like, I don't know what that means. And I can't imagine if her goal was New York, I can't imagine that it was her dream to move to Utah and raise 8 children by herself.
No, I want to hammer that point home. And especially, so this is something that I think that Sarah Peterson talks about in Momfluence. And this is the conversation that I have had over the years behind closed doors in my DMs. And I'm gonna explicitly name it from
Yeah.
Mormon women, like an astounding amount of modern Mormon women who have, they're living different lives than their mothers. And a lot of them are now co-CEOs and leading. They're earning their own money. Hannah Nealman here has her own brand. She is the face of this brand.
I was going to say,
maybe that's
like,
what they're saying is that he took a back seat to her. Like maybe that's what it is.
Well, and that's
But
what's interesting too, that
they
Sarah,
are doing.
so sorry. No, go ahead.
Sorry,
There's a time lag for internet. You're fine.
Well, they're doing all of this financial earning, or they're taking more of a voice, having more of a voice within their households. And maybe even not sometimes, like there is still an interesting dynamic of like who is supposed to be leading the decision making, but the responsibility and the time and energy demands of all of this other aspect of family life is still falling to them. Like it really is a total scam, and it's messy. I've heard firsthand from a lot of people, not just Mormon women, but I just have to like mention explicitly that I do hear a lot of that. But from many, many, many people, I hear that It's rough.
Yeah, it is really hard. And I think too, like to your point, something that I found really interesting, where you're talking about her owning the brand and her being the face of the brand, like running the social media account that she runs is its own full-time job. Aside from the like physical products that Ballerina Farm produces and has to get sent out. What I think is really interesting is the way I feel like Hannah and Daniel are trying to portray equity, that things are equal, which I also saw in the comment section of, well, like let's not skim over the fact that he does laundry. Like he in the article it's specified he helps run the farm and he does the laundry. To which I say, are you fucking kidding me? Like laundry for 10 people, like you want a pat on the back for doing fucking laundry? She has 8 children under the age of, how old is their oldest kid? Like 11? Like
Yeah, 12.
You shared a post yesterday from Remodeled Love that was talking about how Jessica and her husband keep an Excel spreadsheet of time away from parenting to make sure that it's equal, and it was like setting a bunch of people off. That to me is being mindful and caring and giving a shit about the mental health of your partner. This projected picture from this Ballerina Farm interview of, well, he's so much, he participates, like he does so much, like he does so much laundry. It's like the mental and emotional and physical load of that is not comparable. In no way is that you throw out an Excel spreadsheet of that shit, and that's why people won't ever do that in their own relationships. If they're reactionary to it, it's because it is not equal. Nowhere near. Like, are you fucking serious? He does laundry. High five. Daniel, you're such a participatory like guy in the household. That's great. Good for you.
That's the thing about it is, where is it? It's up here. Okay, yeah, they have a cleaner but no child care. Neilman does all of the food shopping, kids in tow, and cooks from scratch. They quote, do not ready meals. I'm sorry, they quote, don't do ready meals. Despite the more traditional aspects of their relationship, Daniel is a hands-on father, taking the kids out to the farm and doing all the laundry. The children appear to look after each other quite well too. There are so many that they seem to have become an almost self-sustaining entity. Still, Daniel says, Neilman sometimes gets so ill from exhaustion that she can't get out of bed for a week.
That is the sentence that is setting the internet on fire. Like, that is the part that is enraging people. And the lack of self-awareness is so evident. It's offensive. It's offensive. Like, I understand that, like, as a neurodivergent person, I am not capable of that level of go. Like, I get it, but I cannot imagine what it's like for someone who is neurotypical to get like, what the
this is really the backlash of this is one of the reasons I have stopped responding to people online the way that I did a couple of years ago, because he doesn't see a problem with his behavior, and he doesn't see a problem with this in any way. And what's going to happen is people are seeing this, and people are seeing through it and seeing it for what it is at face value. And he's going to get shit for it. And he's going to be embarrassed, and he's going to be mad at the journalist and the Times, and he's going to be upset. And that isn't going to be a him thing. That's not going to be a him thing. And for her own sake, she's going to have to protect him from it. And the people around him are going to have to insulate. And in order to stay safe and sane and whatever, this is going to have its own problem. It's going to be its own problem behind closed doors. And what I have appreciated is, at least in the circles that we are in, I have seen it treated with a lot of respect and gentleness. And I also think that this article is relatively gentle. The way that they're really careful to point out his behavior and to not put any judgment. There's no judgment
Yes.
except a description of the behavior.
Yep.
And it was so I just like brilliantly handled, I think.
I think it was very brilliantly handled. And I think that's what's pissing people off so much, for the people who are like defensive of Ballerina Farm and of this article, because it's very difficult to argue. I mean, it's easy to like paint with a broad brush and be like, well, clearly she had an agenda. And it's like, yeah, her agenda was to figure out what the fuck was happening in this household and how this was running. This was a profile. And this part I absolutely adore, because she talks about, like you said, she points out his behavior and says, I want to ask her about birth control. Oh, first of all, I got to talk about this part. I'm really sorry. I got to back up one more step. The bedroom is also where she had her children, with the exception of Henry and Martha, who were born in a hospital, a fact that did not escape some of her followers. Quote, after that, I was like, I'm ready to go back home, she says. I just love having them at home. It's so quiet, which also gave me like Scientology vibes. I didn't like it. She also gave birth to them without pain relief. None at all. She shakes her head. Why? I don't know. I just have never loved taking it. She stops herself, except with Martha. I was 2 weeks overdue and she was 10 pounds and Daniel wasn't with me. She lowers her voice. Daniel is currently out of the room taking a phone call. So I got an epidural and it was an amazing experience. Where was Daniel that day? It was shipping day for the meat boxes and he was manning the crew. But the epidural was kind of great. She pauses and smiles. It was kind of great. I want to ask her about birth control, but we are surrounded by so many children and Daniel is back in the room now too. Do you, I pause and look at her fixedly, plan pregnancies? No, Daniel says. When he says no, Neilman responds gently, Hannah responds, it's very much a matter of prayer for me. I'm like, God, is it time to bring another one to earth? And I've never been told no. So like speaking on her behalf when clearly he's not being spoken to. And then at the very end, she says, the journalist says, Mom, 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 a little girl cries, I want to go to ballet now. I can't, it seems, get an answer out of Neilman without her being corrected, interrupted, or answered for by either her husband or a child. Usually I am doing battle with steely Hollywood publicists. Today I am up against an army of toddlers who all want their mom and a husband who thinks he knows better. It's just the stance of the stance that's taken. And I think what a lot of people who are feeling righteously enraged about this article are very much like, I have been there. And like, this is not, I mean, the number of times I have seen quotes from this on the background music for those TikTok videos is Paris Paloma's Labor, because it's just like, she is an entity. She is an entity and a means to an end. And it's so frustrating to be on the outside of that, looking in, going, holy shit, like you are so much more than this. Like, I'm sorry that you feel like this is the only thing that you can do or that you are meant for, that you are destined for.
Yeah. With that framework, it's interesting. The journalist says, why, I asked before I leave, did she do those pageants in between babies? Well, my sister called me and said, there's a Miss Utah. Let's do it together. She gestures at the children around her, break things up. I feel like it comes off like people can be really defensive when you say things like, you're more than a mother, you're something like, don't limit yourself to this, or like it, and it comes off as if it's like disregarding the value of that work, because like clearly,
Right.
we can assume she's enjoying being a parent. She loves her kids, she loves her partner, she's enjoying the work, whatever. Like that's all good and well. This paints a very clear picture, and I think an exaggerated picture of what a lot of people go through, which is she pushed herself past the fucking brink 12 days postpartum to
Yep.
have an ounce of something that made her feel a certain way outside of all of the
Yes.
other things. She
Yes.
should not have to bleeding and dripping and dragging everybody along with her. It should not take that for her to be
Yes.
able to have be the ballerina.
Yes. 100%. Like it should not it's like you should not have to crawl across broken glass with your family balanced on your shoulders in order to feel like a person, right? Like in order to feel like a person. And it's a both and. It's not that being a mother is not worth anything, that the care that you provide and the time that you spend with your children is not worth anything. It's a both and. And it sounds like for her, what I took away from this article was that it sounds like for her, it's not a both and. It's an either or. And when she pushes herself to that limit, the reason she has to push herself to that limit is in order to, I don't even know, make it valid, like make it important.
Yeah. It was a hard read.
It was a hard read. It was an upsetting read for sure.
I don't know. I like it's hard to I don't even know what else to say about it. Like it just tells such a challenging story, and I think what was really fascinating about it is that we have been told that she probably has the means. The other thing about and
Mm,
that she had nannies and stuff, like that she was getting the help. And that's the
mhm.
other thing about like him saying that he helps out with the laundry. Why aren't they outsourcing that part? Like
Mm,
he said he didn't want nannies. He told her, it says in the article, he told her he didn't want nannies in the house. They
mhm.
do have one person helping with the homeschooling because the kids are homeschooled. But
Mm.
why aren't they having help with that stuff? Like the stuff that they could outsource, they're not. And I think that that's really interesting.
Yeah, I would agree with that, especially considering the journalists pointing out that they don't make meals. They don't do ready-made meals. It's everything from scratch, right? Like, it's like that stuff could be easily outsourced and it's not. It is
Yeah.
what it makes me wonder is like how much, I mean, and this is like a rhetorical question. 'Cause clearly we don't know and we're not on the inside of that relationship. But like how much autonomy does she have to be like, I can't handle that? Like how much room or space does she have in that relationship to say, I can't do that or I don't want to do that? You know what I mean? I just don't.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, okay. And when she's down for the count a week out, every quarter and then, like can't get herself out of bed, is he ordering pizza? Is he
Right.
getting someone to come in and help him? Because like that's the sort of thing is like there's no way that he steps up into the same position. And that's what's really dangerous to me. That's what's really dangerous to me about the messaging from society, from religious organizations, from from culture, whatever is telling you that the best thing that a mother can be is there for their kid.
Right.
The best thing for your child is you always. Everything you've got to give is the best thing for your child. I think that that is so reductive. Um,
Yeah.
Sometimes I'm not the best thing for my child. Sometimes me bleeding myself dry is not the best version. S- a well-rested 23-year-old child-free babysitter is actually going to be a lot better for my child than a totally checked out half-present mother. So like
Yep.
I, there are things there are and anytime there's like a judgy thing about like don't do fast food. It's like
Right.
how damaging is it? Which damage do you want? Which
Right.
damage do you want? What's more damaging? A full
Well, and
belly
also
with slightly less nutrients or a snappy mom? What do you want?
and the societal framing of that too, right? Like which damage do you want? You have to pick the damage and it's like, is it damage? Like
Mm,
it's so like frustrating of like it is not a realistic expectation for kids to go through their lives without eating fast food. I'm sorry. Like I like prior to
yeah.
their existence, sure. But it's like that's not a realistic expectation. So it's like even the societal framing cuz I know that I've been there and struggle with the same thing where it's like am I making the best is a decision that I am making going to damage my kids? It's like yep, I'm probably in my head way more than I fucking should be over something like that. Right? One of our kids just got a
Yeah.
haircut. I'm very worried about it because she didn't like it straight off the bat. and I'm texting my husband because I'm away from home. I'm texting my husband, like, how are they feeling about their haircut? And he's like, I really don't think it's that. I don't think it's gonna ripple effect out to their, self-confidence and how they're perceived and how they feel like they're being perceived. I'm like, are you sure? Are you sure? And he's like, yeah, I'm pretty sure. So it's like, but that pressure on primary caregivers to, like, don't fuck up your kids. This is gonna fuck your kids up. And it's like, it's okay. We gotta, like, let the pressure valve off somewhere. Because you're right. I mean, to your point, like, there's no way he's stepping up. And what I would imagine happens is when she's down for a week, is that she's going to bed earlier than she normally does. I would imagine she's pushing through. She's working through fevers. She's
Yeah.
like food prepping in between, blowing her nose. Like, that's what I imagine he means when she's down for the count.
Right. And
Because when you grow up in a
there's
situation or like a religious structure where it's normalized, that's normal. That's just what women do. That's just what moms do.
yeah, it's a lot. It's a lot. And I guess it's a testament. It's like evidence that you can have all the money and clout in the world. You can have all of the fame and attention and money. He's he's the heir to the jet blue fortune. And still, he can't cut his wife a fucking break. I think at
Mhm.
some point here, and like, I don't want to blame him. That maybe that's a lot of people are very angry at him, and I mean, I'm in that camp too. Um, but it just feels like none of it matters. None of it matters if
Yeah.
you also are like collapsing. But okay,
Yeah.
I don't know if we touched on this enough. Did she choose this? What if people
That's
are just like, well, I mean, this is a life she chose. What do you
that this is the life she chose. I think it's interesting
I'm
because
saying
I
that
think
sarcastically because
yes, no,
I
100%. Yeah. Because I do think that there are people who are like, well, this is what she signed up for, right? Like that refrain we hear very often of like, this is what she signed up for. And what's hard about that is that it's almost like without empathy or compassion to like read in between I don't know. I mean, again, this is all the reason I feel okay speculating about a lot of this stuff is because they offer themselves up freely to be speculated about online. But it's the lack of empathy of like, yeah, but don't you remember when you were stuck somewhere and didn't have the didn't didn't dare question it? You know what I mean? Like that it started as like an inkling whisper behind like in the back of your mind and you knew that if you gave it attention and you gave it which again, I don't know if we've talked about this before, but like in religious context, that's like that's labeled as like the devil. That voice that questions shit is labeled as like the devil and sinful and not okay. And like, well, if you give it attention and you feed it and you give it time, of course you're gonna like stray from the path of the straight and narrow. Like, of course. So it's like it's a self-perpetuated because it's a self-containing thing. Don't free think on your own because that's just the devil trying to get you to question what you know to be true, right? So you can't give it time and attention because, well, I mean, literally, Laura, it's shit where I'm like, yeah, there's a passage in Romans that a lot of pastors refer to that's like, if you, God will only, his hedge of protection only goes so far. And after that, if you keep like going back to a thing that you're not supposed to be thinking about, he'll just give you over to it. Because, like, if you want it that badly, he's just going to let you have it. And so it's this concept of like, you can push so far. And I'm like, and it's like, that's autonomy. What you're referring to is autonomy and free
right,
will
right,
and being able to
right.
make your own choices. So it's framed as a bad thing to be autonomous, to be free thinking. So it's like, when it's like, well, she chose this, it's like, did she though? I'm okay if you're self actualizing, but this doesn't read the evidence I'm being presented with does not read as self-actualization to me. It reads as I am not able to, or I am not in a place in my life to be able to objectively look around and go, oh shit. Or I can't feed that beast of autonomy and needing more autonomy because that will take me away from my kids and it will disrupt my marriage and it will fuck up my relationship, right? Like that tells me that the stakes are very high for her and you can't question. And I don't think I think that's dismissive to say she chose it. I don't know if she chose it. But what the evidence I'm being presented with suggests to me that she didn't chose it and uh, can't humor or tolerate questioning it. That's too dangerous.
Yeah, I think it's a false choice. It's a false
Yes.
choice. And it's like, and that's what I think is so brilliant about the framing of this article, where they open with the scene of her at the pageant and then close on why she does the pageants. Because I mean, I've heard that before, even in my own relationship, where I'm a new mom. I have two kids for the first time. I've got a baby and a 3-year-old and a full-time job, and my husband's traveling, and I would get the messaging of just like, well, no one's holding you back. Just like, why don't you just like carve out some time for yourself? Like, don't let go of your hobbies. Like, no one's telling you no. No one's telling you no. And the circumstances are telling me no. My guilt, the pressure, my conditioning, what I've tied my self-worth to. I am being told it no at every single way that I look. I cannot even fathom saying yes to these things, and you're blaming me. That's what it felt like. And then I just felt worse about myself. I did not have the option.
Yes. You have to read All Fours. Like, I know that we don't typically read fiction. You have to read it because I have to get your read on it. Because okay, so there's a book that was, and this was I'm late to the game because when something's popular, I don't read it until I don't hear about it anymore. But I was like, I don't know, everybody talked about it. I need to read it. I read that shit in 24 hours or less. Like, it was the first time I've read something like that in a long time because it touches on these themes. It touches on the ability to say yes or your lack of ability to say yes, feeling like, I texted Laura while I was reading it because it was like, she talks about going on this trip, and I don't want to give anything away. She talks about going on this trip. She comes home and she talks about making the kale salad for her kids' lunch to put in their bento box. And the compare and contrast of like that transition from having full autonomy and stepping fully into your own personhood and then coming back to like, and not that one of those is more important than the other, but it is the deprivation of those things being intertwined and being allowed to be intertwined that I think, again, I found myself in the same boat where it's like, no, I just became a mother and thought this is what you do because societally, that's what I'm taught I'm supposed to do. The more I sacrifice, the more I'm killing myself, the better mother I am. And it's not, I don't believe that anymore. I don't believe that anymore.
No, I'm excited to read it. And you have to art school analyze it. You have to say the juxtaposition of the kale salad again.
Thank you. It's true. The juxtaposition of, I'm going to dub it in. I'm going to go back and dub it. It'll be like, and the contrast juxtaposition.
Oh my gosh.
It is a very good art schooly read, that book. So much juxtaposition.
Well, yeah, let's add that add the book, and we'll add this article into the links. I think that hearing people talk about this publicly, like I love when something goes real viral or gets trending, and then people all have their take on this. I have enjoyed listening to people's takes on this because of how artfully done the article was. I mean, everything down to the photography style that they used, which is all like Little House on the Prairie, the clothing, the
Yes.
soft cotton, like it's all just really well crafted and gives us a lot to reflect on broadly.
Yes, absolutely.
So yeah, just quick shout. If you are not following us on Patreon yet, we have a free version of Patreon where we send updates and reminders of things like our ongoing book club, our monthly book club. The next one is Hood Feminism. On this topic, I think Touched Out, which is coming up in a couple of months, is very relevant. So you can follow us on Patreon. There is a paid subscription where we offer all sorts of resources, ad-free episodes, and follow us on Instagram. Where else?
Everywhere. We're chronically online. You can find us anywhere.
Thanks for listening. As always, we really appreciate you.
Yeah, thank you guys. We'll see you next time.
Bye. Thanks for joining us on another episode of Time to Lean. Your questions and stories are what keep us going, so keep those voicemails and messages coming.
Until our next episode, remember that you can always find us on social media and, of course, in your podcast feed. You can also subscribe for $5 a month on Spotify for uninterrupted episodes and bonus content.
We're so grateful for your support. See you next time.